Next, I'm going to go ahead and install the vacuum tee that goes in the brake booster line. I'm going to put it right about here. All right, so here is the vacuum tee installed. I've got it routed up over the vacuum booster, down here, alongside of the coolant reservoir, and then I drop down to the lower part and run it across the bottom of the radiator over to the blow-off valve. Next, I'm going to assemble the vent that goes to the top of the valve cover, and that goes into the air filter. This is what's going to provide a breather for your crankcase when you're under boost. And we'll also install the dongle to the air filter. Basically just using a little bit of muscle to press this into here and to press that into there and tighten it up. So the air filter and the breather are all connected to the dongle. To get the dongle connected to the supercharger, again, the radiator has this natural tendency to go backwards, so I temporarily just have a couple blocks of wood pushing the radiator forward, and then with the hook tool that you really need for this,
clamp the dry silicone coupler to the blower inlet. Now spray a little silicone spray on the inside. Push the air bridge assembly down from the top until it seats in the bottom of the coupler. Pop the rest of the coupler over the air bridge using your hose hook. It really is that easy.
Time to fill it up with supercharger oil per the instructions, and then we will be replacing the plug that comes with the kit with this vent instead. But make sure you look at your instructions very close on this, because if you don't put in the exact amount of oil and do this correctly, it could void your warranty and cause you problems. Next, let's tackle drilling the hole for this pin that helps to make sure that this bushing never slides up off of the post on the radiator. And to do that, we have to remove both of the rubber bushings, and we'll be grinding about 1/4 inch off the bottoms so it sits a little bit lower, then drilling a hole through the plastic pin so we can slide the metal clip in. And to do that, I chose to use a bench grinder. There's probably another way that would work better, but it's kind of a messy job. And I took off almost 1/4 inch from the rubber, and now we'll go install this. And there's the finished product. And all we have to do is the same thing over there. To be able to drill in this tight area here, I use this attachment for my drill, which is just a little right angle drill, and was able to drill it just like this because it would be impossible with a full-size drill to get in there. One thing I noticed, and it does say this in the instructions, and I guess I just didn't pay enough attention, is that the hose down here that goes from the bottom of the supercharger over here to the blow-off valve is definitely hanging down a little bit too low, as in if we ever hit road debris, it's going to easily be cut. So I'm going to push that up a little bit on that metal tube that connects below the supercharger. So that's the hose right there. I've got to loosen that clamp up and push it up a couple of inches, and that should raise the tube so it's at least even with the bottom of the subframe. All right, so I've raised this up a little bit. You still have the skid frame here that's going to be lower, and then you've got the tubing going to the supercharger. It is a little bit lower than the cradle, but like I said, it's higher up than the skid frame, so if anything hits, it should hit that first. And that's about as high up as I want to go, so I'm going to leave it like that for now. You will see it is pinched between the sway bar and the cradle. That is completely normal, and A&A has had these running around for years without ever having seen that silicone tube being worn through. So I think this is where it needs to be. On the passenger side front, here's the blow-off valve. Here's how the horns ended up on mine. I found this to be really tricky to get that all lined up just right, to get the horns to bolt in and be able to plug into the proper connector. So, you know, if you ended up making your own bracket right here, that might not be the end of the world, but the stock bracket will work if you just spend a little time with it. And then over here, this is where I remounted. There was a hole in the subframe here. This is the outdoor air intake temperature sensor. And that's where that ended up. So now we're at the point, I'll secure these wires once I reattached the front fascia. These will go to the side marker lamps, I believe. And then I think this one is for the front running lights / fog lights. So we're about ready to go ahead and put the front fascia back on. Okay, you've got the intercooler right here in this opening, and you can kind of see how this is going to go. But we do have to do a little trimming down here because the intercooler tank, particularly on the passenger side, is in the way. So this has to be trimmed right here, and this will no longer be bolted in place. It'll rely on a bolt here and over here. I've got that marked how I'm going to trim it, and let's see how that turns out. And here's how they turned out. As you can see, the bottom of the intercooler contour now matches that of the fascia. Same thing over here on the driver's side. Looking at the intercooler through the front fascia, here is the original grille that you can modify to make that fit. And if you like that look, you can do it, but it does sacrifice a little bit of flow, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this wide open for now. If it bugs me, I'll come back and modify it. Perhaps I'll add this grille back, but I prefer flow because the cooler the intercooler is, the more horsepower the engine makes. Underneath the front fascia, absolutely do not forget to reinstall the air dam. This serves a purpose. When air hits this at 10, 20, 40, 80 miles an hour, creates high pressure, and that forces it to either go down or up through the condenser and the radiator, providing you with valuable cooling. So do not forget to reinstall this. Mine has seen better days because previous owners have decided they like to kiss curbs often. I don't know why they do, they just do, but this one's got a few cracks and it's got a repair here with a little sheet metal and some rivets, but you'll never see this, and it still serves its original job of creating high pressure. Here's a moment I gotta just be real. On the base C6, you have these cooling ducts for the brakes. You can see that. Looks fantastic, right? But if you get underneath here, you just have this little hole that's just kind of blowing at the tire. It's not even aiming at the brakes that are way over here. So is it really doing much? I don't think so. Over on the passenger side, I'm going to go ahead and leave this silly duct off for now because it's going to take some manipulation of the blow-off valve. The instructions talk about rotating it upwards and that sort of thing. But maybe over the course of next winter, I'll look at going with the C6 Z06 ducts, which are actually functional compared to these silly things. And they look like this, just to kind of give you an idea. They come in at the same point here underneath the front of the fascia, but they go up closer to the frame, and then they blow air more towards the actual brake calipers. And here's what mine ended up looking like. This front wheel well liner ahead of the front passenger side tire has to be trimmed a little bit, and you're better off taking little pieces at a time so you don't end up with a big gap there. And I also blocked off the hole for the cheesy brake duct for now until I figure out if I'm going to put in an aftermarket solution or the C6 Z06 factory ducting. So this is what it looks like if you're standing at the same level as the front of the car, but keep in mind, it'll be looking down at it most of the time because it is so low to the ground. Next, it's time to install the Kenny Bell booster pump. And this is important because what it does is increases the fuel pump's ability to pump and maintain pressure while you're at wide open throttle, because after all, we're taking a lot more fuel, but only at wide open throttle. And that's what this does so well. The stock fuel pump functions as it always has, but when you put it to the floor, there's a little switch that turns this on, and it supplies more voltage to the fuel pump, providing the fuel pressure you need to make an extra 150 to 200 horsepower. The booster pump's going to install between the fender liner and the chassis here on the driver's side, right by where the wiring is for the fuel pump. So let's remove the rear tire and get the C6 up in the air. Okay, the wheel's off. Now all we have to do is remove a series of little screws throughout the perimeter of the fender liner and remove the fender liner where we can get at the wiring in this area. All right, we've got the fender liner out. A couple interesting things. Number one, here's the wiring harness we're looking for. Number two, with this out, it'll go faster because we lost about 5 pounds of rocks and dirt and debris as well. And number three, check this out. This bag full of foam or whatever it is, its sole job is to deaden noise from the road from getting into the cabin. So that's kind of cool. And it really doesn't weigh very much, so you can decide whether or not you want to put it back in. All right, here's the wiring that needs to go to the front of the car. The easiest way generally is through the rocker panel, which is hollow. If you look through there, you can see it. I was able to fish this cable, which is kind of rigid, back through the rocker from the engine bay. I'll show you that here right now. Goes right down there. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to connect the wiring from the Racetronics harness right here. Moving over here, we have the optional Racetronics fuel pump wiring plug and play harness kit. This provides a robust power and ground and basically just upgrades the wiring to the booster pump and to the fuel pump so that you don't have to rely on the marginal 20-plus-year-old C6 fuel pump wiring.
There is a prevalent problem with the fuel pump relay pin in the wire harness plug. And if you look very carefully, right here, you will see that there is one that is brown and burned. That, my friends, just happens to be the contact pin for the fuel pump relay.
And this is the cable that needs to go up from the booster pump. I'm just going to temporarily tape that there and make this kind of streamlined. I'm going to take this connector off because it's a shape that's not going to want to pull through there, but you'll see in a minute. I'll tape this all together and tape it onto that cable end, and then I'll say a little prayer and try to gently pull it all the way from back here to the front of the car. Okay, here's what we got. This one is taped right here. That one is taped right there. And I'm going to go up here and start pulling, and we'll see what happens. Actually, I'll push a little bit too. You can see we're almost there. We've got this part coming through, and it's kind of tight down there, but there is a path. Now we just need to get the rest of it up here, and we can disconnect it. Okay, and here is the wire that goes to the booster pump. This will be wired into the pressure switch that ties into the vacuum line. And when it senses that there's boost, it closes the switch and provides higher voltage to the fuel pump. All right, up here, here's what we got going on, of course. First of all, we've got the negative cable off the battery because we don't want to short anything out. Secondly, this long wire that goes to the booster pump, I'll need to cut that off somewhere in here. This is where we're going to put the pressure switch, and it's going to tee into this vacuum line, which goes to the blow-off valve. That's how the booster pump will get its signal to know when we're in boost and when we're just driving normally. And lastly, this is the wire that provides power without going through the problematic fuse box over there directly from the alternator. So we'll hook that up right there. And here is the fuse for that power wire. And I'm going to go ahead and just drill a small little hole right here next to the slave cylinder. And that'll be a great place for this to live. So let's go ahead and get all that taken care of. Can't get in there with a drill, but if you have one of these extenders, it'll allow me to drill that quite nicely. And just wanted to show you that these things are super useful for situations just like this. All right, we've got the lead connected to the alternator and routed where it needs to go. I've got the boost switch wired up and ready to go. I've got the vacuum line and the T on there. I'm just going to cut it right here. I'll wrap this with some insulation material so it doesn't short out on anything. And then this is going to live right down in this area here where you'll never see it unless you're looking for it. And here's what this is going to look like if you're looking for it. So the only thing you might ever notice might be this extra lead going to the alternator. This is starting to take shape back here. I'm going to go ahead and connect the ground terminal. And just so you know, I personally solder everything. I don't like the idea of corrosion getting in there. I don't like the idea of an improper crimp and it falling off. So I'm in the camp of soldering everything. All right, we got the electrical done here. It would be nice if this was a 100% custom application and all the wires were just the right length, etc. But I know if you cut the fuse wire to the booster pump, you'll avoid the warranty, so we don't want to do that. Anyway, we've got this thing buttoned up, so everything should be held kind of tightly and out of the way. There's like an air duct here that goes to the brakes on the rear. So I think we've got everything out of the way, and it's time to put it back together. Okay, I cycled the key a couple times, and I don't see any fuel leaking here, which is the main point of concern. So I'm going to go ahead and try to give this a start.